And if I may, just wanted to make 4 very quick observations which I thought about in relation to this topic. One, it's not strictly documentary, but it's very kind of connected to it, and some of it's partly connected to the technology available now, and the fact that people are filming all over the place with mobile phones, with inexpensive cameras. They're everywhere, and so in a sense everyone is, in a sense, documenting, but they're also, even dare I say it, something like happy slapping, this awful tendency of going up to people and or attacking them. Or I believe last week there was a trial where somebody was murdered and recorded on a phone. There seems to be this desire to perform, to make something up in front of a camera. All this technology is bringing out this desire to put yourself on display, and even the reality shows like The Big Brother and everything that followed, it seems to me it attracts people who are performing. That the whole thing is such a construction, but yet it's presented as, even called reality TV, and is nothing but construction. And very connected to that would be, I've been very taken by the fact that very often you will have on the news or on a crime program, you'll have a mother or a father making a plea to the public for their missing information on their missing child, and there will be tears, and you will be possibly quite emotionally affected yourself, and then a few weeks or months later the same person is charged for the murder of that missing person. So that press conference was a performance, and so that distrust of reality kind of comes in. I wanted to make a brief reference, have I got time? 2 more quick references. To Teresa and George's series on Russia. I wanted to bring it to a couple of references to Russian material, because I watched a couple of times the series that Teresa and George made, and there was something in it that separated it from other films of a similar genre that I had seen. And I think one was the presence of Teresa herself as a translator, because so often you have people voicing, actors actually, usually voicing over the person on the screen in English rather than in their own language, and it seems to be replacing subtitling. Whereas in this series you saw the process of the translation, and you could see Jonathan Dimbleby, who was the person focused on wandering, making this journey across Russia, at times obviously quite lost and quite uncomfortable. And I thought that it's so rare that you see this kind of split inside the film. So it became a documentary inside a documentary, and I really appreciated that was there, that I was allowed to see that Jonathan Dimbleby couldn't speak Russian and depended on someone else, and we were part of the whole process. Another kind of split in the opposite way for me, I saw the film this week, Mikhalkov's 12, which I find when a fiction film doesn't take me up, as it were, I don't get drawn into the story. That film for me just started breaking up, and this is why I was interested by what Sean said, because my only interest in it became the acting styles of the actors, the bombast of the cutting, the incredible amplification of the sounds. So I was almost watching it in a kind of documentary way. And the one part of it which worked for me was this Chechen boy doing this knife dance, which seemed to be almost a documentary element within it. And then just lastly was, because they've been issued with English subtitles recently, the Sakharov documentaries for television that he made on spiritual voices on the Russian army in Afghanistan, and Confession on a Russian naval ship in the Arctic. I was thinking, in what sense are these films documentaries, really? And they themselves just break the barrier. I think at the beginning of Spiritual Voices, there's a very, very long shot, sustained shot, which is digitally, I believe, digitally manipulated, certainly manipulated in some way. There are changes in a fixed shot of a landscape which are not happening as we're watching them. There are things that have been added. There's a lot of classical music used in the film. I don't know how much, if anything, is reconstructed or set up. His own voice is there, and I think, if I remember, in Confession, his voice is openly a fictional voice. He is actually playing a role. But he himself classifies these films on his website as documentaries. I, in the end, think perhaps it doesn't really matter what the film is. It's where it's going, where it's taking you at the end of the day. And I would say that Spiritual Voices is certainly one of the strongest films I've ever seen about military life. That's the best, I'm not sure. But whether it's really a documentary or an essay or a fiction or Sokurov fictionalizing himself, I'm not sure. But I suppose I trusted it, that's the point.
Okay. Again, a lot of points are raised there, and the things that came to mind, which I was going to pick up on quickly because they hopefully lead us on somewhere else. This whole business about process, about if you like, revealing the artifice of the situation, I think it's an interesting thing, and when you're talking about that, it made me think quite a lot about when you're talking about the crossover between fiction and non-fiction films. Again, I was thinking about Italian neorealism and how so many devices that were used there, if you like, were deliberately meant to strip away the sort of artifice of the professional, studio-bound, fascist era sort of production. And all those means of getting rid of the artifice of showing the process act very much in the way that Brecht intended, sort of as alienation devices, which sort of brings me back to the sense that that films are one of these sort of, if I were to talk about defining features, is this idea about being instrumental, about being an agent of social change. And films like the Italian neorealist films were, if you like, geared towards some sort of outcome along those lines. So I think that those alienation devices, the revealing of the process, are quite sort of distinguishing features. But talking about distinguishing features and trying to move on to Teresa, there was something that everyone is expressing this discomfort about the distinction about of this thing called documentary film. I was wondering to what extent this is a necessary distinction, and to bring it right down to the nuts and bolts of the whole process. How important is it in a structural sense to talk about documentary film, non-fiction, simply in terms of finance, simply in terms of distribution, simply in terms of exhibition, festivals, and so on?
Well, I don't know how much I can say to the absolute nuts and bolts of it, but I think that one of the big problems is that if you try to do drama documentary, usually you will get a documentary budget, which makes the the whole business of sets and actors and costumes very, very problematic. And not that very long ago, I was involved in making a two-part